Welcome everyone to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about the CMS, which is our Drupal system here at KU, and just asking that question, is your content accessible? So we'll be taking a look at just how we would usually put our content in on the site, and some things that we should pay attention to, or ways that we can make sure that our content is accessible for everyone once we get it up on that site. So my name is Connor. I'm one of the tech instructors here with KU IT Technology Instruction and Engagement. And then with me, I have Kit Cole. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kit?
Yes. Hi, I'm Kit Cole. I am the Accessible IT Coordinator, and I'm also a tester of software here in IT.
Lovely. And great, we have someone else coming in, no problem. So our topics today, what we're going to be going over is, first we'll just take a look at web accessibility guidelines. So what ones are we going to follow? And they sort of organize those into four big topics or areas of accessibility. So we'll talk a little bit about those with Kit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some content that I've been working on a site. And I'm going to see if Kit can help me get that fixed. You know, does everything look good, or is there some things I need to change? So some of the topics that we're going to have to be looking at would be sections and headings for the content on the page. How I've used my links, are they descriptive hyperlinks? Am I using alt text on images? How's my tables set up? Because I have some data in there in a table. Any lists that I'm using, are they set up correctly as well? And then just briefly talking a little bit about some color and contrasting guidelines. And then at the end, I'll show you some additional resources. So after the webinar, where we can go to continue to get help and think through the stuff as we work on our content. So with that, let's talk about some of the guidelines first. So we have this site here, but I'm going to turn it over to Kit and let you chat a little bit about this.
Yeah. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, as people say, because it's shorter and easier to say, that is basically the blueprint for making online resources accessible, and it's the standard that is used internationally to create resources so that people who make assistive technologies can also code to this and know that their assistive technologies will work with the things that people have created who have followed this standard. So, and by assistive technologies, I mean things like screen reading software like JAWS or NVDA, or things like Dragon that let people verbally dictate to their computer what needs to happen. And then there are various technologies for people who are maybe deaf and blind to use, like a Braille reader. So you need to make sure that they're able to navigate through your site or your document using that.
A Braille reader, so it'll take the content and make it...
Yeah, it basically reads line by line through whatever's on the screen, just like JAWS would, but instead of giving an audio output, it gives... line by line, it gives in Braille what is on that. It's like a refreshable display, so the little pins kind of come up and change what the Braille is. It's really neat. I've actually seen it in use. But yeah, so the person just reads through and then hits a button and it goes to the next line on the page or the site, the software, whatever they're doing.
That makes me think of those things where you ever see them all the pins and you could put like your hand in it and it would leave the pattern of your hand.
Very much like that. Just little metal pins like that. Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's nifty. So yeah. So the WCAG 2.0 document is actually not terribly long. So if people want to dig into it, they can. It's helpful for people who are programmers because you can click on a particular requirement, and then there are help documents that say how to do this in Java or with HTML or whatever. It's got different options. I think maybe PHP sometimes they have. So they actually give coding examples to help you meet that requirement.
Yeah, it doesn't look that long. This is what we're seeing on here on the screen. It looks like there's just these four areas then. So,
and it's
operable.
Yeah, it's organized by those four, as you mentioned earlier, those four concepts. Perceivable basically just means that people can get the information, can read it, can hear it, can see it, whatever. So like, for example, if you have a video and it's a deaf user is watching it, you want to put captions so that they can perceive what is happening in that video. Or for the user who is visually impaired, you need to make sure it's coded in such a way that the screen reader can read it to them. Operable means you can do everything. Generally, you need to be able to do everything with the keyboard, because people using screen readers can only navigate with a keyboard, or someone with a mobility impairment can't use a mouse necessarily. So being able to tab through or use the arrow keys or enter or spacebar to operate everything, like all the form boxes or submit keys, that kind of thing is very important. Understandable, just to make sure that everything is readable. We don't use a lot of jargon. Also to have consistent navigation, so that things that look like links are links, and things that look like, you know, just text are just text and aren't actually links, that kind of thing. And then robust means that basically it can be used across different web browsers and can be used by the different assistive technologies. So.
And I think with us using a CMS itself, that is going to be a big help already in the robustness. There's not a lot we'll have to do ourselves in regards to the content. The system kind of takes that on for us, which is nice. The nice thing about a CMS.
Yes, for sure.
Very good. All right, well, we'll switch back to our presentation here. Thanks for going over those, Kit.
Sure.
So that gives us some of our context for what we're going to be talking about as we go through and look at the actual content that I have. So anything that we're ever going to talk about, we're going to have to really frame it in, you know, these are the ways to frame it. Is the way I've written this, is that going to be understandable? Is it going to be perceivable? Can people get to it without having to use a mouse? And then, like I said, the robustness really just falls down to the system taking that for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a page that I've been working on, and I was quite proud of it, but I know it's not very accessible. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at it, and we're going to spend the rest of our time in the webinar just going through my page and just seeing what we can do to make it better, make sure that it is accessible. So we're going to click on this link here just to switch over there. And it looks like that's loaded up fine. All right, so here we are. So I've got some information that I need to get up on my site about this new scholarship that we're offering. And I wanted to make sure and make it very clear that people know what the scholarship is, how they can qualify for it, where can they apply, how to turn that application in, and some of the rewards in mind. So this is what I've been working on. Now, what are just some general thoughts that you would have on this, Kit?
Yeah, it just, on first glance, it just looks kind of like a jumble of words that I would have to, yeah, I'm a lazy web user. Like, I want things to jump out at me so that I know what's happening and how to, you know, where I need to click to do something. I just this morning registered for a race, and I just didn't read any of the stuff except found the register button and hit it and then went on. So yeah, this it's not giving me a quick clue as to what the basic information is.
Yeah, I'm sure it's in here.
Yeah.
I would say most people maybe agree with what you just said. When we come to a website, you know, think of any sites that I've come to myself. If I can't find what I want within a few seconds, then I start to get really impatient.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I might leave it and go to a different one and do something, depending on what the thing is. But
yeah, it can depend.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me get signed in really quick then. We're going to start making some changes. So I'm going to go up here and just sign in. Shouldn't take me too long. And hopefully I typed in that right. All right, we are in. Okay, so at this point, let's see what we can do to start making this better. So with the CMS, I need to go in and we're going to start a new draft of this page so that I can start editing this content. So I'm going to get in here to the new draft. So now I'm on the back end of the system. My page body is here, and so I'm going to start going through this. Now, all the topics you mentioned at the start, you know, sections, headings, lists, tables, we're not really going to go through that in the order I presented them. We're just going to kind of take this as it comes. So, I mean, right away, I want to break this up into some sections. You mentioned that when you came to that site, you find that section right away that you were looking for, got that information, and you were right. You didn't really see anything else. So I want that to happen with this page too. So right away, this works kind of like a Word document. So we can just click in. I've got the cursor flashing for sentence, and if I use my Enter key, then I'll just create that extra line. So I'm going to say this first little section will just be about, let's call it scholarship information. Now this, to me, this is talking about in order to qualify. Okay, so that, I'm actually going to create another section just for that. So we'll call this one scholarship eligibility. Oh, I didn't spell that right.
Nothing like typing for an audience.
Yep, I know, right? This is when the pressure is on. So we've got scholarship eligibility. We've got those three things listed there. So applicants must also be a US. That looks like some eligibility stuff there too. And all of that. But then all of a sudden it's turning into how to return an application as part of that. That's okay. We're going to have to separate that out a little bit too. So I'm going to create another section. Actually, this is going to be additional eligibility. I'm having trouble with that word today. Eligibility criteria. And let's keep some consistency as well. Additional eligibility criteria. And I'm going to just do the same thing. We're going to make another section here. And this will be submission information. And all this can just be a work in progress as we go through. Now, I'm going to come back and we'll put in some content here because I'm not really seeing a lot explaining what the scholarship is. I haven't got that information in there. So that's something I want to maybe just give some more idea of why people would use the scholarship or some background information on it. Mm-hmm. But for now, we can't just leave these like this. I want to make that stand out a little bit more. And with the CMS, it knows what headers should look like. All I have to do is tell the system that it is a header, and it will do the rest. So we have to do it one at a time. But if I just highlight scholarship information in this first tool where it says normal in the top left, that's a drop-down menu. And what normal means is that that's our normal body of text, so the main part of the content. And as we scroll on the list, we'll see we start getting into heading levels. 1, 2, 3, all the way up through 6. I'm going to use heading 2 for this. And so that formats it for me. I don't have to worry about what size, what font. And there's actually another benefit.
Right.
If I understand this right.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, you could go in and just use the bold to make it jump out like that. But actually marking it with the heading style gives it the proper markup behind the scenes so that someone who is using a screen reader can just navigate through the document by hitting a special key. I think it's H in this case, but they can jump from heading to heading to heading to get to the section that they actually need. So if they want to behave like a lazy user like me and they just want to get to the part where here's where the application is, they can keep hitting headings until they get to the part with that. Nice. Option for them, or they just want to find out where to send it. They can do that. They can jump there and kind of skip the other stuff if they feel like it. So
that's good to know. So that rather than just using bold, because that would make it look okay to me if it's just
right.
bolded.
Yes,
and it would completely take away that functionality from the screen reader.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, very key then. So at least this makes it really easy for us. And another good thing is it's going to keep us consistent for all our pages. So everything's going to look nice and consistent. Actually, not only on our site, all of our KU sites are going to look like that.
Right.
Which, in a way, is good web practice because you're going to start training people how the sites look.
Exactly.
The users, and so as they get more familiar and comfortable with the sites working, they'll have an easier time using them in the future.
Right. Right.
Now, for anyone watching, paying attention, you might have noticed when I was going through and setting up these headings, I've been using heading level 2 for these main ones, and I actually made additional eligibility criteria heading level 3. Now the reason behind that is that when we use headings, We want to use them in a logical way. What that means is, think of our page like a book. So our page title at the very top here is the Arthur M. Knight Scholarship. The system will make that heading level 1 already, and your book only has one title. So that's going to be our main heading level. So every page should only have one heading level 1 at all, either none or at least, or at most one. So then everything else under that would be our chapters of the book. So scholarship information would be chapter 1. So that would be a heading level 2. Eligibility criteria, I'm going to say it's just its own standalone, nothing to do with information. So I'm going to make that heading 2 as well. But then additional eligibility criteria, to me, that falls into this big section. So I'm going to make it heading level 3 so that it still is a heading, stands out from everything, but it's still part of the overall eligibility criteria section. And then if I go back to submission information, we're on a whole different topic again. So that's going to go back to heading level 2. And we just carry that logical thinking throughout.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's looking a little better already from what I can see, because now at least I know what type of content is here that I can scan through the page, at least quicker than I could before, and have a better idea. Now I can see if I'm only interested in eligibility, where exactly to look on the page.
Right.
Now I'm going to fix this one right away because it's just sticking out like a sore thumb. Now this is an attempt to get someone to realize you just need at least one of these, but while it's a good attempt, is not good in practice.
Right.
Because it's so different to everything else on the page. But I think the biggest glaring issue to me would be the color.
Right. I mean, I could see somebody thinking like, oh, it's like a highlighter went through the page. I mean, that might be kind of artsy in some ways, but it also could cause problems for our users with color blindness. They might not even be able to read that depending on the variation of color blindness that they have.
Like yellow, green, or
yeah.
green.
So
contrast issues.
There might be better ways to make that jump out.
Yeah, so what I would do, I'd say is a good practice then would be, let's just say they must meet, I mean, I'm not going to change the wording. I mean, there's no way around that. It has to be at least one of these. But what we could do is maybe just make this bold.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like tagged as a heading or anything extra, but it is going to make it pop a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I do know from working in CMSs a lot that the one thing you should always avoid in web practice specifically is underlining words that are not a clickable link.
Right, because that can be very confusing.
Yeah, because anytime you create a link, it's always underlined, but as soon as you see it, now documents might be a different story, but on the web,
right.
Definitely, I would say the best thing, maybe just stick with this bold. So students must meet at least one of the following criteria. Now, continuing that topic of logical or following logical thinking, I would say when we come to bullet points or anything in a list format, if there's no particular order or steps that you have to follow, I would say maybe not using numbers.
Right. Yeah.
So in this case, you have to meet at least one of these, but there's no reason why it should be 1, 2, and 3 because it could be any one of them. So maybe in this case, we just make it bullet points. Whereas if it was going to be instructions on how to do something, like step 1, download the application, step 2, fill it in, step 3, submit it, that would make a bit more sense to me to have it numbered like that.
Right.
Whereas I just want to list it. So the system makes it really easy to do lists, just like you would in a Word document. We're going to highlight this list here. And then in our toolbar, we have the bullet point option. And we also have the option for doing numbers too. So if we need the numbered list or just a bullet list. Now I can see I had formatted that just by typing the numbers in, so I didn't even use that tool beforehand. Now I'm going to delete these numbers. They aren't needed anymore. And already, because I used that tool, it looks a bit nicer because now the list is even indented and it draws my eyes right into it.
Right. And not only does it do that, but if we did have visual impairment and had to use a screen reader, it would tell us you're at a list now of 3 bullet points, and so we would know, and there's going to be 3 things I'm going to hear next, and those are the options for me.
So it even gives them that context. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And all I had to do was click a button for some bullet points
Right.
just to make sure that it does that. All right, that's looking a lot better. I think I'm going to do the same thing with additional eligibility criteria, because it says they must also be a citizen. There's actually multiple here, but it's all just one sentence. But that, to me, doesn't seem very clear. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to select my bullet point. And then I can just use the enter key at this point, and it'll just, as I go to each start of each point, I can do that. I took away that "and" word. That was italicized as well, but it was just a little different on the page. I don't think that was needed. It doesn't actually tell me that everyone has to have all of these things. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to give that context before the list. So if I just click next to the heading and hit enter, it'll go on that new line and already changes it back to just normal text. So I don't have to worry about it being tagged as a header. And I'm going to put in that little bit of extra context. Applicants must also meet, and let's do that bold option again. All of the following criteria.
Now, I'm not in the CMS very often, and I'm noticing this little green arrow in the lower right. It was red a bit ago. Is that like the
This?
spell check? And
That's actually not something part of the CMS. It's a plugin I've installed on my browser.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's called Grammarly. So it's just a plugin that watches for spelling and actual grammar rules, more complex than just a spell checker. So like
Okay.
punctuation that might be misplaced.
Okay.
And it'll just give me little warnings about that. So maybe it's to kind of help just improve writing style. But there's a basic spell checker built into the system that's always watching too. So
Okay.
the little toolbar up here, and I can always check spelling too.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and go through that way. That's looking a lot better already. So in order to qualify, they have to meet at least one of these and all of these.
It's much clearer.
And it's just listed one by one. It looks a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I could do the same thing here, even maybe just get rid of that "or" and leave it like that. So at least one, and then they can pick that one. Let me get into our submission information. Okay. Now I'm just reading through this. So completed applications can be returned via fax or mail with the number and the address. I don't know. It's one line. That address, usually don't see them listed like that on the web. I might do the same thing here. Not necessarily give everything a new heading, but at least just break it up into some sections to visually separate it. So the screen reader will still go through and could have read that fine, but
yes,
for someone not using a screen reader, this will make a little more sense to them, I think.
Right. Yeah.
It's not all about that. Okay. Now, one thing, as I hit enter, by default, the CMS will create double spacing between things. I don't want that for my address. And so there's a couple of things I can do. If I just hold the shift key and then press enter, it creates a single line break. Another thing is in the style itself for normal, that's where that double setting or double spacing is set. But if I select normal div, then it'll be defaulted to single spacing when I use the enter key. So I mean, either one's fine. If you're on just normal by itself, you could use shift and enter, or with normal div, just hit enter by itself. And there's that little Grammarly plugin that you said, saying
right.
maybe you should use this as the University of Kansas. Yeah. That looks a little better.
Uh-huh.
And what I might do actually is go ahead and just maybe bold the word fax just to make it pop visual interest and make it very clear what these things are. Address. How does that look? I think
that's much better.
Nice. All right. So what we'll talk about here then is we're on to this link. Now, I mentioned in my topic overview at the start of this that we're going to be talking about descriptive hyperlinks. Is there much of a difference? Is this a descriptive hyperlink again?
This is just the actual link where the document is, which, that's descriptive in its own way, but it's not really, we're not computers, so it's nicer to have words that make sense for us. And also, again, for the screen readers, when they get to this line, it will read absolutely everything in that link.
Oh, I mean like /sites /
Yes,
dev.
which isn't really a thing that makes sense to our brains necessarily. So renaming that to use words that actually say, what it is that someone will get when they click this link is a much better practice for all of us.
All right, well, let's reword this then. So I was having this link to a PDF document. I can see that in the end of the link there. So maybe instead of saying that, I could do something like, well, first off, it's not really in submission, is it? Let me give it a title first. So I would say this is application. And I'm going to make that just a heading really quick, just to continue that theme. We could make arguments whether it's a heading 2 or 3. At this point, I'm just going to make it a heading 2. So application, this will be, please, let's see how this works. Please download the scholarship application form. And then I have seen this before, where people have the file type in there as part of that link.
Yes.
That's something you recommend?
I think that's great, because then you know that it's opening a separate document and it's not just another web page, that it's actually something that you could print off if you want. I mean, it just gives people another clue as to what they're getting into.
So then we would just make this whole part of it here that I'm highlighting, scholarship application form PDF. That's going to be our hyperlink. Okay, so in the toolbar at the top then, on the top level, closer to the right side, we have the little chain link icon. When I click on that, the box will pop up, so I can go through and select what type of link it is. So in this case, it's linking to a PDF. So in my system, I'm going to go through just the steps, going to the URL, going into the storage for the site, and finding where that document is. So we'll just use this PDF here as their example. So I'll find it in the list. Otherwise, I can upload it. If it's not in my folders and it's just on my computer, then I can upload it into here. And then once it's in my list, I'll hit insert. That creates the link for me. I'll click OK. And there we go. Does that sound better then? Please download the scholarship application form PDF.
It definitely sounds better and looks better, and is in the format that all the other links are on the KU sites. So that's also helpful.
Great. All right. I suppose another way I could do that, though, that picture, I was actually thinking of making that itself the link to the application. So we've actually got a couple of things maybe of talking about with our picture.
Yeah.
So I do know when I first put this in, I forgot to set alternate text, and I was told it's really important. So first off, if I need to go back and make a change to the picture or put that text in, all I have to do in the CMS here is just double click the picture, and then the box will pop back up with those options. But yeah, why is the alternative text important?
That's it's mostly important for our screen reader users, so that when they get to that picture, they can get a description of what the picture is. In this case, if you're wanting to use it as a link, we would want to have a description of where they would go if they click on the picture or select the picture. If it was just a picture for decoration, we could just put scholarship application and pen on a desk. But since it's a link, I think it's better to have our alt text be what would happen when they select that element.
So if I were not going to make it a link, if I just want to use the picture, I'm just basically describing what it is.
Right.
But I don't have to put in like this is a picture of or image of.
Correct, because the screen reader will say image scholarship application and pen on a desk.
It does it for us. All right.
So,
But then in the case of it being a link, then I won't want to use that because I do want to make it a link at this point, just to clean up and make my page look a little nice. So at that point, would I just use the same as that you're saying as maybe that descriptive text?
I think that's good, yes.
So scholarship application form PDF. Oh, okay. All right, well, to make it a link from here, so these options under image info are for setting out text. We can do some resizing and some visual elements of the picture. The second tab at the top is for link. So when I go in there, it's just like setting up that hyperlink the first time. I could either just copy and paste an address if it was to a website, but again, this is a PDF document. So I'll just go to the server, which is the site storage here, and go find that same document that I was using. So once it's uploaded in here, it stays here until I delete it. So I don't have to upload it every time, just that first. So I'll select it, click insert. Again, the link's there. I'm gonna click OK. So now, I really don't need this link anymore. So I want people to just use that picture. So maybe I'm going to reword the sentence altogether and say to download the application, please click on the following image. Something like that work. It's sort of giving some instructions
Right.
to anyone using the site where they can go to find it. Maybe they're not aware that that picture is clickable.
Right. Yeah, that's good. In general, we kind of want to avoid using words like the links to the left or the image above or below. So I think that's great the way you've worded that to say the following image, because it is the next thing after this sentence.
Oh, okay. Is there a reason off the top of your head, why we wouldn't say links to the left, or?
Mostly for the people using a screen reader who are just listening, because the links to the left may have been read first or they may be read last, depending on how the page is coded. I think in our CMS, generally when we have the links to the left, it reads those first.
Okay.
Unless there's a little sneaky feature on all of our web pages that is a skip to main content. So if you go to a KU web page and just start hitting tab, it will pop up kind of in the center of the top of the page, and if you click that, it jumps the focus into the content. It's not so important for those of us who can see it, but if you're using a screen reader, it lets you skip all that navigation and even the side links. So saying the links to the left doesn't necessarily mean someone anything to someone who's listening to the page.
So maybe you could just call, because the links to the left anyway are going to be pages. So I guess if you ever wanted to, you could just call attention and say, like, visit the name of this page.
Right.
Visit the other scholarship page for more information.
Yes.
And then that could be on there somewhere on the page anyway.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. That's good to know. All right. Well, as long as this looks okay for now, since it's not really, because it's the very next thing they see. So following image.
Yeah,
I think that'll be a little bit better. And it looks, at least it's some visual interest, not just all text on the page, and something nice to look at. Which brings us then to our table. Now, at first glance, it's a very basic table, but this might look okay. So I do know the way a screen reader reads tables is it will read it like a book, left to right, row by row. So semester, award amount, spring 2019, 2500, fall 2500, so on. So I guess in this table that might be okay, but there are a few things we can do in the CMS that will make sure our table is fully accessible. And there is some things we can to make this look even better, even though I think it looks okay.
Yeah.
So what we can do is, if we just right click into one of the cells, the little box pops up. We can go to table properties, and that's going to open up the window with all of the settings that I had when I first added this table. So it's not very complicated to go through, because those settings are provided to us. So I know right away, headers none, that's not true, because my first row is headers, semester and award amount. So when I select that, I can choose if my table has the first row, which in my case it is, or if we have a table with first column, or both. I want mine just to be the first row because I guess technically spring, I would say that's part of the data though. So if I just do first row, is there something else on here that we have to do for a table?
The caption would be, I don't think
Yeah.
it's a have to do, but it would be nice.
Is it? All right, let's put in, I'm going to caption that. That's the scholarship because that'll give some context to the table, right? That's what the caption
Yes.
does. So scholarship award amounts. I think that should do it for us then. We've got our rows. I mean, that's just about sizing and spacing.
Yeah.
All right, so we made sure that we had our header identified, row, column, or both. And then the caption is the context, what information is in the table. I see it actually looks different, and I actually prefer that though. And here's where our caption showed up. So rather than just having the text above, it links it a lot closer to that table. And then I'm sure if we read the guidelines, it's going to tell us something about tables. I'll actually show, I think it might be mentioned on our site that you manage, that content accessibility site.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll show that in a few minutes actually, where it's one of those resources we can go to. And I think it talks a little bit about this. If I remember reading right, I think the caption becomes part of that screen reader as well. So it'll say like, this is a table for scholarship award amounts,
Right.
whatever I caption it as.
It would tie
And
it
then you can
to
go
that
through it.
title instead of just having a title floating out in space and then a.
It sort of makes it more cohesive behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the one thing I might do, we'll see. Maybe put that up in the bigger section up on top. But at this point, I wouldn't say it's a big concern right now. I want to just make sure that this is all looking a little better. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go down and save the page as a draft. So that way I'll go back to the front end of the site and see the page as the public would see it. But I haven't published it yet. So if you're wondering, that's what this big pink box behind everything is for, is to just say, this is a draft. But I think that's looking so much better than when we first started.
I agree. I can be my lazy user and
Yeah.
find exactly what I want.
I already know what this scholarship is. I just want to see if I'm eligible and go right there to that section. I need
Right.
at least one of these done. Okay, we're working on the all part. I'll apply for it next year. So the other thing we talked a little bit about was, again, putting content in a logical order. Mine, I just noticed, might be a little bit out of place. So to me, a logical order would be, I come to the page for the scholarship. I want to see the information, like what is this scholarship and what's the amounts? Okay, am I eligible? All right, I'm eligible. Where do I get the application? Now I filled it in. How do I submit it? That to me is like the clear steps of I would go through thinking. So I would probably want to order my content that way. So I would definitely move that table up on top, and maybe I would put submission information at the end and make the application higher up on the page, because those are going to be the things people will be looking for the most anyway. I don't want to have them scroll too much to even get down to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just more, I guess, just gender or general user friendliness.
Right. Right. That makes it better for all of us, for sure.
Well, I think that's looking a lot better, Kate. Thanks for your help.
Yeah.
With that. I'm going to do some extra work later and then I'll get that published. So for now, I'm going to leave it like that. But what I'm going to show everyone then, let's talk a little bit about some of these extra resources that we have. So I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint presentation. And let's go to that slide. And we'll pick it up from here again. So one thing for all of us listening, and if you're watching on YouTube later, if you ever have a technical issue working in the CMS, I just wanted to point that out right away. If you need help with that, you can contact websupport-sn@ku.edu, and that'll create a ticket in our help system. And then one of the developers of the CMS will be able to get back to you and help you out with that issue.
Mm-hmm.
If you need just more resources and help for web accessibility, WebAIM is a great place to do that. So if you go to their website, they have a ton of information
And that
They do,
beautiful search feature too. I
do
use
they?
this so often, and that is the first place I go. I love that it's right there at the top because if there's a topic I want to know
Yeah,
more about, like proper alt text, they have, you can just put that in there and it will find
that's
really
great.
short articles that that can help you do whatever task it is you're needing to do.
Very
So
cool. Look how much stuff. That's just all in alt text. There's 10 pages worth of content there to help me.
I will say when I've used this before though, when I click on one of those, it's a 1 page or 2 page article. So it's nothing is
Mm.
so daunting that it's not like you have to read War and Peace to learn about any of these topics.
Oh, good.
So
Well, definitely keep this one in mind. And they do offer like accessibility training and stuff as far as professional development goes. I've never looked into that myself. It's not something the university
I actually
provides that
did
I
that one. It's
have.
nice.
Is it
Yeah. Went to Logan. It was nice, Utah.
Logan, Utah?
Mhm.
So that's one to keep an eye on. Let's go back to here. One thing that we've also just done is our team has just made a video that talks about this same stuff, but specifically for making a Word document and how to make that accessible. So I'm going to send this PowerPoint to everyone who's actually in the webinar with us today. And you can use these links yourself. And this links to that video. If you are watching this on YouTube afterwards, then it's on our channel, the KU Technology channel, and that's the title, Creating Accessible Word Documents. So I would definitely check that one out next if that's something you work with a lot and need some help making sure that they're accessible.
Yeah,
And then,
particularly if you make documents that get sent out to a wide audience, that's a great idea to go through that. And it's a nice short video that just gives all the highlights rather.
yeah, I think you'll see some parallels to what we talked about today,
Yeah,
but it'll be more tailored specifically to that Word document, whereas today is like exactly in our CMS system and how to do that.
right.
And then I did mention this site already. We'll go ahead and show this. So the one that you manage, Kit, content accessibility,
Hmm.
and it's not wanting to click on that one. Try
Oh,
my. I'll just go to it. Content.accessibility.ku.edu. And so I know I've used this site a lot already myself. We've got the main areas for anything to do with documents, accessibility, help with the web, which we talked about today, and even videos. So whatever we kind of need to do for our job, we should be able to find some help in here. But
hmm,
I have leaned on this one quite a bit when I've been doing my own work. So if I go into the web section, it's organized by that topic. And some of the things we talked about, if you are familiar with HTML, you can go in and do that in the coding and tag things and work with your content that way. And it'll give you some more guidelines. I didn't talk about that in our webinar today because a lot of people I work with don't have that level of experience. But
right.
the CMS makes it so you don't have to have it. We just
Yes.
use the tools the CMS provides. It will make sure our content's going to be accessible. But for those who have the experience, like example would be tables, it'll walk you through a little more of this is what your coding should look like to make sure it's tagged correctly. And there's the example. So just by me creating that table and using the settings that like setting it that's a header row and putting a captioning in, that did all this for me.
Right. Right. And or just like the headings that you could go in and code that yourself or
Mm.
just let the CMS do it for you, which is so much easier and nicer.
Just by using that little box that was up on the top for the heading there.
Right.
That's perfect.
And also on that web page,
Mhm.
I think under contact is my contact information. I think it's been
Let's
a
check
while
here.
since I've looked. But so if there are further questions, yeah, I'm in there. kitcole@ku.edu. Feel free to contact me with other questions as well.
Very nice. All right. Well, thanks very much, Kate. At this point, I'm going to just see from our audience today, do we have any questions for myself or Kit? So you can feel free, if you like, you could unmute. We are recording the session, just so if you did want to ask a question and you want to ask it out loud, you'll be on the recording. If you're not comfortable with that, you can always put it in the chat box and we'll be able to see that. But if you don't have any questions, I mean, we'll wrap up. We'll hang out here for a few minutes just to see if questions do come in. Otherwise, thanks for joining us today. I'll send a follow-up email to those in attendance, and then just keep an eye out if you ever want to watch this back or share it with your coworkers. It'll be up on our KU Technology YouTube page by the end of the week or next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for coming.